Now wants its guns and ammunition returned. Cleveland Meredith
I don't
Jr.
follow you there.
After
All
Go
right.
ahead and there we go. Can you hear me? All right, we're back. All right. Let me exit my full screen here. There we go. All right, Leslie, are we recording?
Yes.
Okay. Hello and welcome to session 1 of the Nonprofit Management Institute. Thanks for bearing with us as we bring in our interpreters here. Wanted to give them just a couple of moments to go over some initial slides for those of you that are requesting interpretation or going to join in on that. We have Monse and Jackie from Sensole.
Muchas gracias. Hi, everybody. Hola a todos. Ahorita vamos a dar las instrucciones de la interpretación. Este va a ser un espacio bilingüe en inglés y en español. So hi, everybody. We're going to go over the interpretation instructions. This will be a bilingual space in Spanish and English. To jump into your interpretation channels, you're going to want to find the interpretation button. The interpretation is available for anyone who is not bilingual in both Spanish and English, as those will be the 2 languages in the space today. So if you want to listen and participate in English today, you're going to want to click the interpretation button and find English as preferred language. And that way, anytime that Spanish is being spoken on the call today, you will be able to receive the English interpretation as long as you're on that English channel. And vice versa, whenever you speak English, everyone who wants to listen in Spanish will be able to receive that message in Spanish. If you're on a smartphone or tablet, you're going to want to find the 3 dots on the bottom of your screen, and that opens up the language interpretation menu. And similarly, you're going to want to click English, and then you will be all set to go. Para poder escuchar la interpretación, si están en una computadora, el botón de interpretación se va a ver de esta manera. Van a seleccionar interpretación y después escoger español como su idioma preferido. La interpretación es para todas las personas que no son bilingües en inglés y en español, ya que va a ser un espacio bilingüe. Entonces, si usted desea participar en la llamada y escuchar la llamada en español, van a seleccionar ese idioma y ya cuando ustedes quieran participar, nosotras vamos a estar interpretando entre los 2 idiomas, entonces pueden participar en español y nosotras vamos a pasar su mensaje al inglés para los participantes que solamente hablan inglés. Si están en un teléfono inteligente o tableta, pueden seleccionar los 3 puntitos que similarmente le abre el menú de la interpretación y ahí seleccionar español. So just a couple of reminders to help us create this space together. We need everyone's support in order to make this space possible. Entonces, nada más vamos a pasar unos recordatorios para ayudar a crear este espacio juntos, ya que necesitamos la ayuda de todos. Please mute your mic whenever you're not participating so that we reduce background noise. Por favor, mantengan su micrófono apagado cuando no están participando y así reducimos el sonido de trasfondo. También, por favor, solamente hable una persona a la vez, ya que solamente podemos interpretar una persona a la vez. Please also speak 1 person at a time, as we can only interpret for 1 person at a time. Nada más un recordatorio de respirar. Esto nos ayuda mucho con nuestro paso y el ritmo en el que hablamos. Also remember to take a breath. This helps us so much whenever we're speaking at a faster pace. It helps us slow down. Also, please take a pause whenever asking questions as to make sure that everyone receives a message, as the interpretation is a couple seconds delayed. También cuando hacen preguntas o cuando hagan preguntas, por favor, mantengan o den un espacio porque la interpretación está un poco atrasada. También, por favor, hablen en voz alta, fuerte y claro. Please also speak up loud and clear as you're able. And please remember to keep a moderate pace as you are speaking, especially if you're reading. También tengan un paso moderado, especialmente cuando están leyendo. And if there's any issues with the interpretation, please let us know in the chat. Y si hay problemas con la interpretación, por favor, háganos saber en el chat. We're going to test the channels now to just make sure that everyone's in their correct channel and is listening to the language that they prefer. Entonces, ahorita, si solamente hablas inglés o prefieres el inglés, debes de estar escuchando a Jackie interpretando en el canal de inglés. Entonces, si me pueden dejar saber con un dedito de que sí me están escuchando a través del canal de inglés. Entonces, ahorita deben de escuchar a Jackie. Ok, perfecto. And now, I see some people that weren't able to hear Jackie. You want to go to the globe at the bottom of your Zoom window and find the interpretation button. ¿Sí me pueden
And
escuchar?
Can I just ask? And so what we click on, if I'm wanting to listen in English, I am clicking on the little button that says EN for English. Okay.
Correct. Mm-hmm. Okay. And if you're still not able to see the option, we can follow up with you as well. So just let us know with a message in the chat. Okay, so now we're going to test the Spanish channel. So if you're a Spanish speaker and want to listen in Spanish today, you should be hearing Jackie interpret into the Spanish line now. So just let us know that you are able to hear Jackie on the Spanish line. Okay, I think it's all working. So just let us know if you're still not able to hear the interpretation. Please drop a message in the chat, and then I'm happy to help you out. Thank you so much for creating a bilingual space today. We'll pass it back over to you all.
All right. Go ahead and share our slides and get rolling. Thank you, everyone, for your patience as we set all this up.
Why is this not working?
What's wrong, Lisa? Oh, you're on mute now.
Nothing. I was talking to myself out loud.
Oh.
Sorry. All right. Are we ready to get started, Rebecca? Or
Yes, I think so.
great. Well,
do we want to have folks go ahead and add the
yes.
EN or the
Yes.
SP to their name?
Yes, if you wouldn't mind, just because we have breakout rooms a little bit later, if next to your name, you can put, if you're listening, and put EN for English, obviously, and SP for Spanish next to your name. And if you want to know how to do that, if you go to the upper right-hand corner of your pick, there are 3 little dots. If you hit it, you should be able to rename it or just add it to your name title. Will be helpful on our end. We appreciate that. If any problems, just let us know. We can tell you how to do it again. All right. Rebecca, are you doing 1 and 2?
I'm going to let you take it from there.
Okay, great. All right. Well, welcome everyone to our sixth oh my God, Nonprofit Management Institute. We welcome all of you. I see some familiar faces and names from the some past sessions we have had. So welcome. We have this is our first time, and we're very excited about having our interpreters online with us to bring this institute to you. So if we can, let's get started. So we don't want to hold you up too much. My name is Lisa Crosland. I'm the Chief Learning Officer here at the center. The North Carolina Center's mission is to educate, connect and advocate for North Carolina nonprofits over 100 counties. So again, we welcome you. We hope that you have received our workbooks. If you have not for this series, please let us know. I believe, and Rebecca, correct me if I'm wrong here, how are we on the Spanish version of the workbooks? Where are we at this moment?
Yeah, good question. So the workbooks in English were sent out to most of you. We had a few people that registered last week, so you'll get those workbooks in the mail ideally this week. We'll be sending another batch of those out this week in the mail, which will come to you by next week. And then we also, for the Spanish version, we'll be sending you the links to each session as a digital copy. And then our goal this week is to print those off and mail them to you, so you have one that you can write in and scribble in and take notes.
So just keep us updated if you have not received it. So I'd like to turn it over to our CEO for a quick welcome and to thank our sponsors.
Thank you, Lisa. And thank you all for joining us for this. I can't believe it either, Lisa. Sixth Nonprofit Management Institute. This is very exciting. And perhaps what is most exciting to me is that we are also now offering this program with interpretation services. And I just appreciate everyone who has helped to make this happen. So thank you very much. I know that you're going to introduce your team and our facilitators this morning. So let me just take a little bit of minutes to thank our partners and our sponsors. I also am trying to slow my own speech down because this is a learning opportunity for all of us, right? And so I'm trying to purposefully speak slow so that our interpretation services are able to interpret in Spanish what I'm saying. So for our partners and sponsors, we especially would like to thank Z. Smith Reynolds Foundation, the Guilford Nonprofit Consortium, with whom we formed this Nonprofit Management Institute, CARI Live Inspired, and Duke University Continuing Studies for those especially who are seeking to use this course, this institute, to complete their certification on nonprofit management. With that, Lisa, I think I turn it back over to you to introduce your team. And I'm only going to be on for a few minutes this morning. I'll see you all again in 2 weeks. Thank you.
So like I mentioned earlier, thank you, Jean, and thank you again to our sponsors. Just to give you a quick intro to our team, as I mentioned, I am Lisa Reed, the Chief Learning Officer here at the center. We have Rebecca Beck, our Education Manager, and Leslie Morales, who's our Nonprofit Services Assistant. They will also be there to help assist. So if you see our names in the chat, please feel free to send us any questions or anything that you need for us to do along the way. Okay, sorry.
This one?
Yes, please.
Okay. I will fill in just to mention about the Duke Nonprofit Management Program Certificate. You will receive a certificate from the center acknowledging your completion of this course. And then as a separate process, you can submit for credit hours towards your own custom certificate for the Duke Nonprofit Management Program. And that is something that will come at the end of the series. We'll invite you to go ahead and express your interest through an online form. And then that initiates a process with Duke wherein they send you the documents that you'll need to fill out. And then we sign off on that. And then they accept payment from you on that.
I'm sorry, I have one question. If we've already received a certificate, is this a mandatory part of this, or do we just kind of, can we waive that part?
Yeah, no, that is completely optional. If you're working on that program certificate or you'd like to start, that's an optional part of this. Good question, Antoinette. All right. And maybe, does that help, Dr. Palmer, with volume? Okay, just need to hold this up to my mouth. Sorry about that. All right, let's move on to the next slide. As we work together through this 6-part series, we want to encourage everyone to participate as much as you can. Have your video on as you're able. Be a part of the group. Be willing to share. We want to sort of have like a baseline for how we all will communicate in these sessions. We will seek first to understand, not to be understood when we're sharing things. And we all will take on the responsibility to demonstrate our collective commitment to equity, diversity, and inclusion. So next slide. I will pass it off to you, Lisa, to go over
Right.
our agenda.
So just go over quickly what you'll be doing today. We're going to have a brief introduction because we're going to have spent 6 weeks together, guys. So we want to make sure that we're feeling comfortable with one another, making sure you're asking questions as we go through this. We'll do a brief introduction, and then Dr. Palmer will take us through our principles, which includes our management conditions, capacity assessment that you'll do today, and practices, and she'll explain each of those as we go. We'll have a session evaluation and closing. Now, what you don't see on here are bathroom breaks because, or just a break period. We will fill those, you will get them, and we will see how the audience is doing as we go along instead, because we don't have a set time for that. Feel free if you have to get up and take a break yourself, but they will be built in as we go along. So let's move on. I want to introduce, this will be Dr. Pamela Palmer, and she has provided consultation in various roles related to leadership, organizational, program, and community development. Her professional experience includes consulting in the areas of program development and management, organizational development, staff development, program evaluation, and community development, as I mentioned before. She has special interest in church development. It's her desire to support church-based initiatives to help members maintain a spiritually driven life. She currently leads the Guilford County Resource and Referral Center as one of the founders and executive director. And in addition, she's an instructor and assistant professor of nonprofit leadership and management for 23 years at High Point University. So let's get to know each other a little bit, if we can. Rebecca, you want to talk us through our
Sure.
introductions?
We're going to invite you all to use the annotate feature to place a stamp on the map of the state where you're located. If you want to go up to your top of your screen, you'll see under view options, annotate. And I see Summer's on there. You can go ahead and click on the annotate and then find a stamp of your choosing. You can do a check, a star, a heart. I see some popping up there now. Good.
Yep.
Great. Sometimes we've had problems with the annotate, so I'm happy to see that it's working. Make this bigger so we can see where everybody's. Nice.
Mm-hmm. A little bit of everywhere.
Mm-hmm. It's nice to see everyone calling in from all over.
Oops, someone's not working.
Oh, sorry about that. We
Sabrina,
got
yeah.
so Sabrina in Guilford,
Yeah.
Marlies in Durham. Nice. Well, thanks for participating in that. It's nice to sort of see where everyone's based.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I'll go ahead and clear
Great.
that off and we'll move along. Clear all drums. There we go. All right.
Great. Thank you for that. And we'll probably be referring to that back and forth as we go, just so we can see what areas again. Oh, you cleared it all off. Okay, that's fine. Well, let's move on. Dr. Palmer, I believe you're on with starting us off with the capacity building framework for nonprofit management.
Great. Good morning, everyone. And I always get a kick out of watching where all of our participants are located when we kick off the institute each session. It is also good to see, I'm seeing names and somewhat faces of folks that I know, and so hello to all of you, and greetings on behalf of the North Carolina Center for Nonprofits to those of you who we don't know, and we will be getting to know a little bit better as we work through the Institute. I do want to just kind of highlight a couple of elements of how the Institute is structured, and then we'll begin to do some onboarding today. Kind of setting the stage is really what we're going to do a lot of. You should have, I think, my teammates mentioned at the beginning of the call in the class that you should have received your workbook in the mail and or electronically. And so hopefully you have that at your disposal. This is a participatory type of learning experience. And so we will be building upon the work that we do in each session. We will build upon that. So to kind of get to the end, it is hands-on. We are and will be asking you to engage by physically completing worksheets, sharing information, going into breakout rooms. And so while I know it's very tempting to multitask when doing a virtual class, I would encourage you to kind of keep pace with us and to stay in the moment. We will be moving along, and there will be things that we ask of you that if you kind of get sidetracked a little bit, you may actually miss out on quite a bit as we move forward throughout the session. So, and we don't want you to get confused. We don't want you to get off track. And so I would just encourage you to try to be as hands-on as possible. And we also encourage you to use your video as much as possible as well. My preference as your facilitator is to be in gallery view. I like to see the class. And so while we have our slide deck to help guide us through the work that we're going to be doing, I oftentimes will ask my teammates to get me back into the gallery view, because that is just kind of where I like to spend our time. So we can see each other, so I can see you, et cetera, et cetera. So I just want to kind of highlight those things just from the from the onset. We are going to be working, utilizing a capacity building framework for nonprofit management that has been developed and continues to evolve by the North Carolina Center for Nonprofits. This framework includes a principles and practices guide. And in that guide, we have 12 principles. There are 3 management conditions. There is a practical capacity assessment that we'll be referencing and utilizing today. And then also there are a total of 216 practices across those 12 principles. And so our work will focus in on 6 of those principles. However, I think it's important to understand that these principles are interconnected in a lot of ways, and there is quite a bit that we learn from session to session, topic to topic, that interfaces with other topics that are in our framework. So I want to just kind of highlight that. We will be covering again 6 of the 12 principles. We will spend some time at a glance, however, at all 216 practices. And so I just want to kind of leave any room for any comment at this point in terms of what our framework is. Any thoughts there? And feel free to use the chat as well. As we make room for any questions or comments about our framework, I do want to reference our principles and practices guide.
Next slide.
So our principles and practices guide was sent out as an attachment as a PDF in the pre-session email that you received. When you open the cover of the principles and practices guide is what you see in the first frame or the first space. And then when you open up the guide, you will see that there is a tool there that helps us to know how to use this guide. And that is, like I said, that is in the, just in the cover. Once you get in, move in a couple pages, it's on page 5. What you see on this page is you're going to see on each page for each principle, you're going to see the title, just as in this financial management example, you're going to see the title of the principle. And these are what we consider to be some of the essential or fundamental nonprofit management functions. And so you will see the title of the management function. You will see the primary practice as described by and included in our framework. And then for each of the nonprofit management functions, there are prompts: build, thrive, or sustain, in terms of the management condition of the nonprofit organization that you might be trying to do a review of as it relates to capacity. And we're going to use this a little bit more today. So, but just kind of real high level, this is you're going to see for each principle, there's a primary practice. And so we consider our principles as being what nonprofits manage. In this example, again, it's financial management. In terms of practice or practices, this is how we are conveying and communicating that nonprofits manage. And then the current management condition are those stages that give us some indication of our capabilities of a nonprofit in terms of managing our growth and development. So we will be coming back to this information as we kind of move forward and look at each of our principles for the series. Rebecca, did you want to talk a little bit more about the guide, how they can access it, if they want additional ones and all that?
Sure thing. As a member, you can download a free digital copy of the Principles and Practices Guide on our website under publications. We do charge if you would like a hard copy. I know some of our Town of Cary folks will get that along with their book that came along with the grant for that program. But if you're interested in purchasing any copies, hard copies, just feel free to let me know. You can send me an email or just pop a chat in the chat here if you'd like to learn more about that, and I can send you details.
So if we could go back to the gallery view, that would be great. And we're going to transition into our work for today. And so kind of as we do that, I want to give a little bit of time, team, for folks to kind of make this transition. So we've shared a whole lot of information to get you started today. And so take about 60 seconds just to kind of shift and transition, get your workbook out. We're going to be referring to that. And team, I'm just going to take a 60-second pause just to kind of let people kind of regroup. I'm not sure how far your coffee or teapot is to you. If you want to do just a real quick kind of getting all that in order, because we're getting ready to kind of put our hands to some tasks as it relates to our framework. So team, I'm just going to pause for about 60 seconds to give people a minute to transition. Rebecca is giving me a thumbs up, so. Okay, I hope that helped some of us just to kind of transition into our work. So as I mentioned before, we at the North Carolina Center for Nonprofits have a capacity building framework that we present, share, and kind of show you how to operationalize in your own individual nonprofit organizations. And so one of the first things that we'd like to have some discussion around is your perspective or your thoughts of what you would say are the top 3 most important functions in which nonprofits lead and manage. So I'm going to kind of say that again. What we want to know, just begin to give this some thought. What would you say are the top 3 most important functions of managing a nonprofit from your perspective? So just kind of think about that for a minute, jot those down, what you consider the top 3 to be. We're going to have you share those. Rebecca's going to give you more instructions on exactly how to do that. But jot down those 3. I'm just going to take a nanosecond here to give you an opportunity to do that. And then Rebecca is going to share with you how you can share your response to that question. Okay, Rebecca, feel free to
All
share.
right. So I've popped a link in the chat for Mentimeter. You can click on that link and it should allow you to enter in your 3 management principles into that. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and we'll be able to see the word cloud develop here. Nice. Are y'all seeing this? Wow, fundraising is a big one there, of course. We expected to see that one come up. Nice. It's fun to watch it recalculate. All right, we'll give about a few more seconds for folks to enter in their responses, and then we'll start to look at which ones pop to the top. The biggest ones in the word cloud indicate the most frequent responses. I love to see relationships up there several times as well. Relationships, relationship building. That was something that came up in our EDI sessions. We mentioned that relationships are the currency of nonprofits.
And also just kind of taking this consideration, we have 54 participants in our space today. There's about 5 of us that make up the team, and maybe a couple more than that. So then each of you are putting in 3 of the what you consider to be the top kind of areas of management of a nonprofit. So that gives you an indication, if we're all putting in 3, the volume that is being calculated there. I think it stopped dancing. I think
so. Yeah. Feel free to go ahead and go over ones that pop out for you, Dr. Palmer.
Okay, so it looks like fundraising. Yes, looks like that is the number 1. And also go to page 8 in your workbook. As we're recording, we can use that worksheet to record what we as a group indicated as the top 12. So I'm going to try, Rebecca, to get to 12. Some of these are competing. So group, you can shout out as well as I'm going through these, kind of what you think in agreement versus not. But we're going on, as Rebecca said, the size of the area of management. So fundraising looks like it's number 1. And then it looks like, somebody just added something. Financial management looks like is the second one. Gosh. Is it relationships and communication? Yeah.
And strategic planning sticking out to me.
Oh,
The
yeah,
strategic planning,
Uh-huh.
communication, fundraising, and financial, those top four.
Relationships,
Mhm.
let's see, communication, strategic planning. What was the other one you said, Lisa? Did I get them all? Strategic
I
planning,
think,
communication, fundraising.
yeah,
blah, blah.
those top four, that's sort of right there in the middle. Mhm,
Okay.
five.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah.
What might we say group? Gosh, these others are competing. Number 6, I think transparency looks like is coming up a little bigger than some of the smaller ones. Accountability is looking like it's also, let's see,
Board
integrity and
governance.
accountability. Yep, board governance is one.
Mhm.
Okay. And I see integrity there. I'm at number 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And it's also, I don't see, that's kind of where we are, it seems.
Mhm.
So just for the purpose of recording in your workbook, I'm gonna kind of start at the top. Number 1 is fundraising. Number 2 is financial management. 3 is relationships. Communication is number 4. Strategic planning, number 5. Transparency is number 6. Number 7 is accountability. Number 8 is board governance. Number 9 is integrity. And then 10, 11, and 12, there's a lot of competition there for what kind of falls out as being 10, 11, and 12. But there are some unique ones, I would say, like authenticity of the mission. I think that's a little bit of a different way of saying some of what we do when we're managing a nonprofit. In terms of, I see advocacy, civic engagement down there. I see responsive to community. Sustainability is in there. People and culture is also listed there. So strategic and cause driven, I think is what I see there as well. So in terms of just kind of thinking about managing a nonprofit organization, again, we have identified 12 principles that we hone in on in our work. And so what we want you to do with this list is we would like you to compare the list that we just generated with at the North Carolina Center for Nonprofits, our principles and practices definition. The
Dr.
12,
Palmer, I'm sorry, before you go on, okay, you got
I
it.
see it, yeah. All right, so we actually had 9: fundraising, financial management, relationships, communication, strategic planning, transparency, accountability, board governance, and integrity. And then 10, 11, and 12, it seems like there's a lot of competition for what those might be. But so we had 9 that kind of evolved to be more noticeable. So we want you to look at page 9 in your workbook, and we want you to do a little bit of comparing and contrasting. So our class list was 9 plus 3, right? Where is it that what we came up with our class list, how close are we or how far away are we from the principles identified on page 9? And we can go back to gallery. And you can unmute yourself, or if you want to, raise your hand in terms of kind of what are your thoughts about what we came up with compared to what we focus on in our work at the center.
I think that we're about 50% in line with the top 12 that y'all have. Given that we didn't name 12, but still about 50% in line.
And I do see there's a comment in the chat. What's missing is people and culture. Now, we do have an equity, diversity, and inclusion principle in our list. That is principle number 3. So that lends itself, not 100%, but it does lend itself a little bit to that. And if you look at the practices under equity, diversity, and inclusion, and if I could, now I'm gonna have you just kind of get comfortable with me. I'm gonna have you referring back and forth to all the materials that we provide. So we didn't send you all that stuff to not use it. So in the principles and practices guide, if you look at page 9, you're gonna see equity, diversity, and inclusion, and you're gonna see some elements of people and culture. It's not labeled that outright, but you're going to see some elements of that there. Our team, are there any more comments in the chat? I don't want to miss any as it relates to what folks see. So we had a response of we're about 50% in line. So what we generated organically in the moment this morning, we're about 50% in line with what it is that we discuss and train on and provide support with as it relates to the center. I'm gonna just quiet my voice and give some other folks an opportunity to make comments.
Hey y'all, this is Morgan. I find it interesting. I think one thing that we did, like we mentioned relationship building, and I think that can be applied to a number of the principles, like, you know, partnerships, board governance, human resources, equity. And so I think while we didn't name these specifically, I think we were definitely on track in terms of where the focus is when we think about doing those things.
Agreed, and thank you, Morgan, for that, for your feedback. Agreed. I'm going to continue to leave a little bit more time for others to comment. As we move forward with our work, the next piece of information or part of our work is to look at another aspect of the framework. But I do want to just kind of roll call all of our principles. So principle 1 is advocacy and civic engagement. Principle 2 is board governance. Principle 3 is equity, diversity, and inclusion. Principle 4 is financial management. Principle 5 is fundraising. Principle 6 is human resources. Principle 7 is information and technology. Principle 8 is legal compliance and transparency. Principle 9 is partnerships and collaboration. Principle 10 is program design, management, and evaluation. Principle 11 is strategic communication. And principle 12 is strategic planning. And so in terms of what we consider to be some of the fundamental management functions, here's our slate. And this is not to say that there are not others that could be added, but here's our slate in terms of our principles. As we mentioned before, each of our principles is accompanied by a primary practice. And so that is the additional description that you see for each of the principles as we have it listed and outlined on page 9. Lisa, I don't know if you have any comments about that before we move on into our next part of our work.
Not at this moment. Go ahead. I keep forgetting I'm on mute. Sorry.
No worries. All right. So we've reached a point where we would like to take an official, oh, I see, you'll have to pronounce your name for me, Paola, just so that I don't mispronounce it. I see your hand raised.
Gracias. Mi pregunta es, ¿me puede explicar por favor un poco más cuál es la diferencia entre el principio 12 y el principio 10?
Sure. So our 10th principle is program design, management, and evaluation. And our 12th principle is strategic planning. And I would have to just say from the onset that these are two distinctly different management functions. When we talk about program design, management, and evaluation, we're looking at how programs are designed, meaning all the different characteristics of a program, and we're going to do a deep dive into that. But there are different characteristics of programs that are very, very similar, might I say universal across programs. So we design our programs and then we have to manage them, and then we should be evaluating them. So program design, management, and evaluation. Some of our nonprofits might refer to programs as services. And so that there may be just a little bit difference there in terms of what we call those. Strategic planning is typically planning for the entire nonprofit organization. So the whole organization. And when we engage in strategic planning, we are trying to determine what the strategic direction will be, should be for that nonprofit over a period of time. Some strategic plans are 2 to 3 years, some strategic plans are 5, some strategic plans are a little bit longer. We don't see strategic plans beyond 5 years anymore, like we used to. Many of the nonprofits that I work with, their strategic plans are about 3 years. Does that help? And team, I think there are some questions in the chat or comments in the chat too. I think I saw some pop up.
Yeah, there was a question from Reginald in response to the question that sort of precipitated our discussion. What are the top 3 most important functions? Would you like to answer that one?
So I would say they're all important. And I would also say that these management functions are interconnected. Quite often, if I'll just use the example since I was talking about program design, management, evaluation, and strategic planning. Quite often, when we don't have a strategic plan in place, we will find ourselves trying to implement programs and services that don't align with our mission and vision, or programs and services that don't align with what our overarching direction is for the organization. So I wouldn't necessarily say one is more important than the other in terms of my response to the question.
Right. I think that's all the questions we have.
Okay.
We've had a couple comments. Paula, thanked you for that response. Maya said it's like an ecosystem. That's a good way of thinking of it for sure, with all that interconnectivity. And then Sabrina said, I look at SP as the roadmap for a certain period of time. So strategic planning as roadmap for that point in time. Great.
Great, thank you all. And here's the thing, we really appreciate your commenting and providing feedback and sharing. I know that there are 50 plus of us in this class, I get it, but we can all learn from each other. So please don't hesitate to share as time permits. We encourage that. And I really view all of us as colleagues in this work. There are things that I can learn from you, and so, and that our team can learn also. And so please don't hesitate to share and be as engaged in that way as you would like to be. So don't feel like you don't have we don't have a space for that. We do. and we encourage it. So we looked at our framework from the very beginning, and we talked about the fact that we have 12 principles, and we have those primary practices that are aligned with each of those. There are some very specific principles that fall under what we call our management conditions in terms of where is our nonprofit at the time in which we are looking at these principles to determine how we want to build capacity. So our management conditions are framed around build, thrive, and sustain, right? And so we're going to take a break, but when we get back, we're going to do a deep dive into those management conditions. We're going to go into some breakout spaces to do that. And we're also going to spend some time as a group really looking at where organizations are on the call or in the class, where your organizations are in terms of your current management. In terms of your current management condition as we have framed it. One of the things that we know that is essential when we're trying to determine, number one, what level are we in terms of our capacity across these management functions, but what do we want to do to enhance or grow and develop? And so that's what we're going to be looking at next. We're going to set the stage today as it relates to assessing our capacity, as it relates to these principles. And then as we work on the specific management functions in the upcoming sessions, we will have identified where we are and had some kind of thought around, well, how do we want to grow and develop each of our individual nonprofit organizations? So again, when you get back, you're going to be referring to page 10 through 14. We're going to go into a little bit of doing some breakout work, and we're going to do a deep dive into these other components of the framework. So team, I'm going to pass it back over to you all to talk about the break and take us into a break.
Sure thing. I'm sorry, Dr. Palmer, did you say how long the break will be?
Let's do a 5-minute break.
Okay, so it's at 10:27 now. We'll come back at 10:32 or so. And if you haven't already, please make sure that you put your EN or SP next to your name so that we know if you want to be, what breakout room you want to be in. You can also put bilingual and we'll let you choose which you'd like to attend. But feel free to take a break, turn your screen off. Don't leave the room yet. Turn your screen off and we'll see you back here in 5. Thanks, everyone. Dr. Palmer, one of the things that the interpreters ask that we do is to maybe give a title of which workbook page we're referring to, because some of the page numbers in the Spanish version will be a little different because the content will be, different. So, or not content, but it may take up more space. So if you can do that, that would be great. And I'll chime in if we go over something and want to make sure they know which page to refer to.
And Rebecca, just feel free to jump right in,
Okay.
if I'm moving along and you think you need to, help others stay on track, just jump right in. I'll just stop.
Okay.
Yep.
No worries. Thanks.
Mhm.
I'm gonna pause our recording.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Rebecca. And this is Jackie here, the interpreter.
Caroline, is that coffee? Rebecca Dobbins, is that coffee? I see some coffee cups. I'm a coffee drinker, so I've already had 2 cups this
No
morning.
coffee here, just water.
Oh, okay. I thought I saw a cup there. Where are my coffee drinkers? Just give me a reaction. I actually think there's a coffee cup reaction feature. I think. Now I could be wrong. Maybe I'm thinking about the emojis in the texting. I don't know, but where are my coffee? Where are my? I'm gonna scan my gallery here just to see. Uh-oh, is that Carla? I see you. Let's see. Who else? Ah, there it is. See in the chat. Thank you, April. Yeah. Now where are my tea drinkers? Where are my morning tea drinkers? Do we have any folks that prefer tea as opposed to coffee? Thank you, Reginald. I see your comment in the chat. Both, Megan. Okay. All righty. What about my soft drink morning beverage folks? Because I know Brittany says all forms of caffeine are welcome. I get it. We are definitely going to get to know each other, as they say, better and better, right? As we move along. And so I know that there's Diet Dr. Pepper. Oh, water. There you go. Oh, if I could just take in more water as opposed to coffee. I love to smell the coffee, not drink it. But we will definitely be getting to know each other as we move along in this learning experience. So here we go. We're going to take a look at the 3 management functions. And so this is titled page, you should be on page 10 is where I want to go, with principles and practices, approach and framework. That's the page number I want to go to. And then we're going to spend some time talking about how we use these management functions. Now, as I mentioned before, the Nonprofit Management Institute, it has an emphasis on management. And while we know that there are some elements of leadership that are significant, the Management Institute is, we focus on these management functions, and we convey that and share that as it relates to these being principles in our framework. And so when you look at page 10 of our workbook, I don't know, team, do you want to populate that on the screen for folks, just as a for some who may or may not have? I'm hoping everybody has the workbook, but if you could just kind of show the our principles and practice, approach and framework. So one of the things that is important to consider when we are building capacity of nonprofits, regardless of what the area of capacity is, it is important for us to contextualize where that work is going to take place. And so when in terms of contextualizing that, a way in which we do it is we look at the current condition, or we frame the way in which we identify where we are in terms of our capacity, or we frame it around the current condition kind of concept. And so when you think about build, and when you think about thrive and think about sustain, we have crafted a way to consider those frames and to consider those current, consider where a nonprofit is in terms of its current management condition. So with build, what we are sharing is that the nonprofit meets its legal requirements, and it operates with the fundamental components of governance, which is our board of directors work, and nonprofit management. So what we say here is that fundamentally we have these 2 elements in place. when we identify our current condition as being thrive, what we are suggesting is that the nonprofit is demonstrating a working knowledge of governance. So we see it at work with the board. We see oversight at work with the board. And we also see evidence of nonprofit management taking place in the way in which that nonprofit is handling its day-to-day operations. And the day-to-day operations could be handled by paid staff, could be handled by volunteers, as well as it could be handled by our board of directors in terms of a board being an active board. Now, let me clarify. It is not a common or best practice to have our board of directors doing and overseeing the day-to-day operations. And I know that some of our nonprofits are set up where it is a volunteer nonprofit, meaning there is no paid staff. Well, things are a little different when you have that type of structure. But a traditionally structured nonprofit with paid staff, a board of directors minimally, then we are seeing evidence of the handling of the day-to-day operations as it relates to nonprofit management. Sustain, if we're identifying a nonprofit being at a sustain, their current condition being sustained, what we are saying here is that the nonprofit is capable of sustainability. And there's evidence of that. And we can see that by the nonprofit being a community asset. There's a stable revenue stream that is coming through that nonprofit. There are operating reserves potentially with that nonprofit. The programs and or services that are being offered by the nonprofit have a track record of good work, good evaluations. Governance is really strong, meaning the board of directors is doing its job. And there's a respect from our peers in our local communities and our constituents, meaning the folks that we serve, that there is a significant level of respect and regard for the nonprofit. So again, build, thrive, sustain. A way of putting this to practice in the moment, if you think about the nonprofit that you represent today, which of these three would be the space or place that your nonprofit is today in this moment? Are you more build? Are you more thrive? Or are you more sustain? And we always get the feedback that, well, I'm a little bit of build and I'm a little bit of thrive and I'm a little bit of this. Where is it that your nonprofit is in terms of the most? And thank you for responding in the chat, Joy. So if some of you could just kind of put your response in the chat there, because we're going to take this another step. So again, just kind of overarching, when we think about build, thrive, and sustain, we are taking into consideration the current condition of the nonprofit organization as it relates to each principle. So again, we're going to do a little deeper dive here. We have these frames, and so now we're going to look at each of the frames as it relates to each of the principles. But before we do that, we do want to take a minute to have you spend a little bit of time with these three frames. Now there's more to come, right, on page 11 through 14, but we're not there yet. We're focusing in on build, thrive, and sustain, and we're focusing on this worksheet titled Principles and Practices Approach and Framework. So this is the principles and practices approach and framework for the North Carolina Center for Nonprofit, i.e. the Nonprofit Management Institute. What we would like for you to do, we're going to put you in breakout rooms. And Rebecca, I'm not sure how many folks we're going to put in each one, but we want to keep in mind the time. So I am thinking that we'll go into breakouts for about 7 minutes.
Okay.
And in your breakout rooms, here is your task. When you go into your breakout space, you and your colleagues are going to have a discussion around what is the difference of each of these frames? What is the difference of each of these frames? Also take in consideration the narrative that's at the top of page 10. So we want you to have some discussion around this principles and practices approach that we are laying out for you and what we've shared so far, and the framework. Our time is now 10:44. And so we're going to go into breakouts, Rebecca, for about seven minutes, I'm going to say, depending upon how many folks you'll be placing in each room.
Okay. We've got anywhere from 7 to 8 in each group.
Okay.
So I'll go ahead and open up the rooms. Please note that if you would like to stay in the main room where the Spanish translation will happen, to just disregard if I accidentally gave you an invitation to one of the breakout rooms, you can just disregard it and stay in the main room. If you're still in the main room, but you want to join one of the English speaking breakout rooms, just let me know in the chat and I'll assign you and we'll go from there.
Rebecca, there was a comment for 10 minutes. We normally do this for 10 minutes. We can go ahead and bump it to 10. I was trying to save 3 minutes, but I see there's a there's a comment in the space, so we'll grant that.
Okay, sounds good. All right, 10 minutes. Got it. I'll open up the rooms. And do we want to have one person be assigned as the report back? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so that'll be your first order of business, is to assign a speaker from each of your groups. All right, we'll see you back here in 10.
Being patient and our return back to our space.
Can I make an announcement? I'm so sorry, Dr. Palmer. I don't mean to interrupt. I just want to make sure that everybody is aware of what to do. Once you have gone into the breakout spaces, it takes you out of your interpretation channel. So in order to hear and understand everything that's being spoken, since Spanish and English are being spoken on the call today, anyone who is not bilingual in both languages both of those languages needs to get on an interpretation channel. And if you have any questions about how to do that, please put in the chat. There's a lot of great conversation in both languages, and we want to make sure that everyone's able to cross-pollinate and have dialogue across your ideas. So that's why we're here to interpret. And thank you so much. And let us know if you need help getting back into your channels.
And I just want to do a check-in with that. Does anybody need, are there any needs in the space right now related to that? Okay, everybody good? Just want to make sure. Okay. All right, so your task in the breakout rooms and spaces was to have some discussion around what is the difference in each of these frames that we shared with you. And how many breakout rooms did we have, Rebecca?
We had 5 plus our main room here.
Okay, so we had 6.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so if we could hear from maybe 2 or 3 of the breakouts, what was the nature of your discussion and what was the takeaway in terms of the difference in these frames?
I'll jump in. We had a lot of good discussion. And so looking at these categories, build is in a lot of ways, and my colleagues actually did not use these words. I kind of summarize them this way. You're looking at relative infancy in some or a number of different principles when it comes to managing a nonprofit. So you're talking about in the build phase, it's foundational, it's basics, it's establishing your mission, establishing your cause, establishing and or upskilling your board, finances, right? Establishing or growing your finances, making sure you can cover payroll, just some of the basic foundational pieces, licensing, etc. You go into Thrive, that's more of the, again, all relative, the more of the toddler phase, toddler/teenager phase, if you want to look at it that way. Better flow, you're figuring it out, right? You're humming. And then you go into the sustain or the relative adult phase. You're looking at better capacity, your ability to your ability to have growth and manage that growth is better. You are receiving specifically receiving notoriety from others, not just you in the community tooting your own horn, but now other people are tooting your horn. You are also recognized for your program design, your ability to design a program, implement it, and most importantly, evaluate it, and also recognized for your ability to then mentor others, whether it's individual mentorship or organization to organization mentorship. But most importantly, you realize and acknowledge that you are not perfect. So there's that goal for, or there's that never ending, never ceasing continuous improvement.
Thank you for sharing. Could we have one more group share?
I'm happy to share from our group. We took the perspective of just kind of describing where each of our nonprofits were, and it was fabulous because not only were we from across the state, but also in where we were. We had one group, Morgan shared, that started in 1960. So she was in sustain mode and was sharing a little bit about some of the things that they were doing in terms of building out programs and staffing. And then we had one group that was just getting started. I'm trying to look at my notes quickly to see if I could call her out. Oh, it was Christy. And they are hoping to really launch fully in August and September. So it was great to hear the things that she's doing to build their organization and the thoughts. And then sustain, we had quite a few that were in there. The question that came up that was from, I think it was Megan, she felt like her board is bouncing between Thrive and Sustain and was just curious if that was okay. And I personally thought, yes, as you're trying to re-engage, especially after COVID, the Thriving is a good place to be with that perspective.
Thank you. Is it Liza?
Liza,
sorry.
except for I don't sing and dance.
My apologies.
No
thank you,
worries.
Liza. And thank you, Andre. I think that Andre was the one that shared. So yes, all of what you described are ways in which we can consider a way of understanding the frames. Andre talked about it from the perspective of it appeared human growth and development, in terms of kind of showing, going from infancy to a toddler to adulthood. And then Liza, did I get it right? Liza talked about it from the perspective of where each of the individuals in her group, kind of how they identified in terms of where their nonprofit is as it relates to management condition. As we move into assessing the capacity related to the Build, Thrive, and Sustain frames for each of the 12 principles, so I'm going to repeat that. As we move into assessing the capacity or thinking about where we are as it relates to Build, Thrive, and Sustain for each of the 12 principles, it is important for us to understand that context matters and that the life cycle of your nonprofit matters as well. And just because my nonprofit is 120 years old doesn't necessarily mean we're at sustain. We could be 120 years old and have circled back to some of the elements of build. And so understanding where our nonprofits are in its life cycle is important when we begin to think about how do we want to enhance capacity so that we can experience growth and development. Contextualizing that for if you are an executive director in this work that we're doing today, it's as important to the staff person who is working within the nonprofit. Understanding the life cycle and where the nonprofit is from the perspective of being a board member is important. So our stakeholders of the nonprofits that we represent, especially those stakeholders who are a part of managing the nonprofit, it is important for us to contextualize where we are. Some organizations contextualize it using these frames that we've shared, and some nonprofits have other resources that they use to frame. Because if your nonprofit is a part of a, let's say, a national network, maybe your nonprofit is a chapter within a bigger network of organizations, you may very well have management capacity building resources that are utilizing a different frame. But my opinion of that is that when you really start drilling it down, you'll start to see the same language. You'll start to see the same kind of elements of understanding. So we start this institute with, where is your nonprofit? Where is it today as it relates to these frames? Is it at build? Is it at thrive? Or is it at sustain? And we're going to have you complete worksheet. Let me give you the page number. We're going to have you complete the worksheet on page 15. So you're going to be using that to record your response. And then you're going to be referencing pages 11 through 14. And I'll say that again. You're going to be recording your responses on page 15 of your workbook. And you're going to be using pages 11 through 14 to record a response of your current management condition related to each of the 12 principles. So you are starting with the page 15, which is Principles Basic Capacity Assessment. Principles Basic Capacity Assessment. That's page 15. And then page 11 through 14 is titled Management Conditions, Build, Thrive, and Sustain. So you're going to be recording those responses. And I'm going to start us off with the first one. Before I do that, however, we've been talking about where our nonprofit is in terms of its project, in terms of its life cycle. And so when we finish this exercise, I want to share with you a resource, and I'm saying that so the team can get teed up for it. Once we finish this work and completing our assessment, I want to share with you a resource related to even more understanding around where is our nonprofit in its life cycle. So to get started, when you look at page 11, you will see that the first principle there is advocacy and civic engagement. So you're going to be noting for the very first item on page 15, where your nonprofit is as it relates to this particular principle. Now notice each of the frames for each of the principles is customized in terms of the narrative, is customized related to that particular principle. So again, you're going to be recording your response to each of those. And we're going to give about 12 minutes for completing the worksheet. So we're going to give about 12 minutes for completing the worksheet. So here is page 15. And if you're having some difficulty with your workbook, go ahead and take a picture of this real quick. Because we're going to be moving kind of back and forth. So go ahead and take a picture of this, because this is where you're going to record your response. So for advocacy and civic engagement, if you're build, you're going to check build. If you're thrive, you're going to check thrive. And if you're sustain, you're going to check that. So you're going to check one of these for each one. Team, we're going to take about 12 minutes to do this. And so it's 11:11 right about now. So around 11:25, we want to be finished with this part of our work. And we can go ahead to page 11 in the workbook. Yeah, come back. And then we'll, for those who, I think I saw a comment in the chat that there may be some difficulty getting to this. And are you all putting the link to the document in the chat, and that way folks can access it that way?
Yes, so the first section handouts were shared in the reminder email that went out, but I've added them here in the chat if you'd like to download.
Okay.
And Leslie put in the Spanish handouts there as well. Thank you, Leslie.
And for those of you, I think I saw a comment about the workbook. Please try to access that workbook, because you're going to need it even more so after we finish this part of our work. So. So we have about, maybe 5 more minutes, 3 to 5 more minutes to finish. In the chat, just give me an idea of what number you're on. Just so I can just gauge where we are. In team, if we could scroll up here. I don't know if folks may have moved beyond number 3 and maybe, okay, I see done, I see number 10, lots of folks are finished. So if it's okay at 11:20, I'm gonna go ahead and move us into the next part of our work because it looks like we're moving to being moving to being finished. So at 11:20, we will go another step with this framework. And if we could go back to the gallery, I think we should all be finished. So let's just do a little bit of a debrief on kind of where we all landed as it relates to the builds, the thrives, and sustain. So of course we have the 12 principles, and in terms of just kind of thinking about where we ended up. So give me, so tally up for me, how many builds did you have? How many thrives did you have? And how many sustains did you have? So, you know, your worksheet has the 3 columns. So just kind of give me an idea of how many builds, how many thrives, how many sustains, because these are 12 fundamental areas of management. I see I'm looking in the chat team for responses as well. So build was first, thrive, and then sustain. Do we have any organization that had all 12 sustain? Okay, I see a 0 sustain from Tanya. And team, I'm just trying to keep up with the feedback that we're getting in the chat. I actually saw a 0 for sustain and a 0 for build. So I don't think I've seen a 0 for thrive. So that may be an indication of just, you know, truly where we all are. Just out of curiosity, and use your reaction button. If you would use the thumbs up, how many are startup? If you could just kind of give us an idea, how many of you are startup? Christy, is that a hand raised for a question or is that a hand raised for startup? Okay.
By startup, you mean
Yes.
new?
Yes, I'm new. I'm sorry. Yes, I do mean new. So you are just starting your nonprofit.
Take it up.
Okay.
I think I'm
Okay.
only saw one hand up.
Okay. All right.
May have
Okay.
missed, but I think one.
But I am seeing, Lisa, the comments around, well, we're 3 years old, but we are seemingly in the startup phase.
Mhm.
So,
Guess it
So
depends
that
on how
gives
we
us a-
define new.
okay, so that gives us a sense of just kind of the build, thrive, sustain. So what have we done so far? We have introduced the framework. We have shared our 12 principles of nonprofit management related to nonprofit management. We have introduced and hopefully left you with an explanation of the 3 frames related to management condition. And we've given you an opportunity to actually spend some time and sit with the 12 principles and what build, thrive, and sustain mean as it relates to those principles. So again, we're building on each part of our work, right? We're adding to it as we go. So the next thing that we want to do is we want to go a little bit further with assessing capacity of the 6 principles, i.e. management functions, that we're going to focus on for this institute. So for this institute, we are not covering all 12. For this institute, we're covering 6 of the 12. And what we want to do is we want to have you to take a deeper dive of looking at capacity and where you are and where you would like to be within a year's time as it relates to these management functions. So team, if we could go to the slide in the slide deck titled Capacity Assessment. And then I think we got a break coming up, don't we? You know, I'll keep going and going and going and going. But I think we probably need to take a break before we go into the assessment. Does that sound like a direction to take?
I think so. That sounds good.
Okay, great. All right, so here we go. We are going to assess the capacity related to the practices that accompany each of these principles. So we are going to look at board governance. So you're going to be indicating for us where your organization is currently, not where you want to be, but where you are now as it relates to board governance. That is principle 2, and it's on page 17 and 18 of your workbook, okay? So you're going to see this may be a good note to make. There are 26 practices for board governance. So you're going to be reviewing 26 practices for that particular principle. The second one is financial management. That's principle 4, and that is on pages 20 and 21. There are 21 practices for that principle. We're also going to take a look at fundraising. That's principle 5. That's on page 22. And there are 20 practices for that principle, for that management function. The next one, or the 4th one, is human resources. That is principle 6. And that is on page 23. And I do believe there are 23 practices for that principle. So that's human resources. Program design, management, and evaluation. That's principle 10. That's on page 27. And there are 16 practices for that principle. Strategic planning. That's principle 12. It's on page 29. And there are 19 practices for that principle. So in essence, what we're doing is we're we're going a little further. We're going to look at we want you to study each of these principles and the practices that align with each principle related to build, thrive, and sustain. And what you're going to indicate for us is you're going to indicate where your organization is now. Where your organization, not what you want to work on. So we want you to indicate what you currently have in place as it relates to build, thrive, and sustain. So you're going to look under each of those frames. You're going to study those individual practices, and you're going to indicate which of those where you currently are. Again, this is not what you want to work on. This is indicating where you are now. And we're going to provide you with a link to actually plug in that information. I think there's a question in the chat. I missed it. I saw it flash up, but somebody will have to tell me what was.
I think
placed
she was
there.
asking, could you list the numbers in the chat? I missed a couple. She has 2, 4, 5, 10, and 12.
I'll just go. You mean the number of practices?
That's what I'm assuming.
Okay. All right. Board governance is 26. Financial management is 21. Fundraising is 20. Human resources is 23. Program design, management, and evaluation is 16. And strategic planning is 19. If you all would go to the next slide in this deck. So for each, we're using fundraising as an example. So here are the 6 that you're going to focus on, and you're going to indicate for us those elements or those practices that are currently in place. Those that are currently in place, because we're looking at where we are now, because we want to make some decisions about where do we need to enhance our capacity. Where do we need to enhance our capacity? And so we're going to have you do that. You're going to be using a link. It's tied to SurveyMonkey, and you will be submitting that information electronically. So before we get into that, let's team, if it's okay with you, I want us to go ahead and take a break. We'll take a break at 11:35. We will come back and we will start our work to complete assessing these areas, and the team will give you more instructions once you get back from break. So 5-minute break, 11:35. I know that was a whole lot. So just know I'm going to repeat it again when you come back from break, but I just wanted you to kind of hear it, at least initially. Take a mindless break.
Thanks, Dr. Palmer.
So here's what we're doing. On pages, let me get back over here. Pages 16 through 29, you have 6 principles and all of the practices that align with those principles. And you are going to be, I have to tweak my instructions just a little bit from what I said before break. So what you are identifying and what you are noting when you put your response in SurveyMonkey is you are telling us which practices you want to work on in the next year, in 1 year. Okay, so again, I have to tweak my instructions. What you are doing is you are using pages 16 through 29. That's each of the 6 principles that we're focusing on for the Institute. And you are noting when you go into the survey, which of the practices you want to work on in the next year. You will have until 12 noon, give or take a few minutes beyond that. You will have until 12 noon to finish making the assessment. Again, I know it is tempting to multitask and to say, I'm going to do this later. I would encourage you to utilize this time to complete the assessment. Then when you're finished, there's no homework. When we finish today, so to speak, there's no homework. So you'll have until 12 o'clock to do that. The team is going to put the link to the survey in the chat. But before we do that, we're gonna, if it doesn't distract any of you, we typically play music during this work. And so we're gonna put up a quick poll and you kind of tell us what you prefer. Do you prefer rainy jazz cafe type music in the background? Or is that lofty hip hop beats? So just kind of real quick, click on one of those and hit submit. And then the team is going to play that as our background music while we work on the capacity assessment of the practices.
Yeah. All right, so it looks like we've got 60% participate in the music poll. I'll end it so you guys can see the results here. Oh, we're getting a couple more coming in. 72%, 75%. Nice. It was hard to choose both options or a vibe, yeah. We'll have other times where we have music playing so we can play the other one later.
And just, I was gonna share, Rebecca, too. Now, folks, I like music. So oftentimes we'll inquire with you during our session about music, so.
So this is the, hopefully you all can see this, but the lo-fi hip hop beats won out just barely, just barely. So we'll play that in the background. If you're someone who likes to work in quiet and solitude, you can always turn your volume down on your own computer so that it doesn't bother you. And like Dr. Palmer said, we're right about at 11:40, so we're gonna give you all 20 minutes to work on this. We'll do a check-in probably to see where everyone's at. The SurveyMonkey link that it'll take you to, you'll need to go ahead and enter just a quick information, name, organization, that sort of thing, so that we can link your assessment back to you. And if you go through one of the sections and let's say for build under board governance, you don't have anything to check, it should allow you just to go on to the next one and not have to check any boxes if none of them pertain to you. And then our goal is to send you your private individual results by email before the next session. So you'll have a copy of your own results, and then we'll compile an aggregate for Dr. Palmer of the top requested items from each of those categories, so she knows what things to focus on throughout the next remaining 5 sessions. All right. Leslie is going to cue up our music while I share this link in the chat here. The only other thing that I'll mention to you is that you want to make sure that you complete the assessment in full, and because it will not allow you, it will allow you to go back and forth, but once you hit submit, your answers are in there. So you want to make sure you go through each section one by one. And here's the link in the chat. Here we go.
that we were all able to complete our task, which was to indicate for each of those 6 principles the practices that you want to work on within a year's time. First of all, just give yourself a hand clap for doing that from 11:35 to 12 o'clock. So give yourself a hand clap for that. As Rebecca mentioned to you, the treat is that you'll get your individual report back. It'll be sent back to you. And then we'll look at our collective responses and have some discussion when we return next week for our second session. Because there are 50 of us in this space, give me an indication first. Use your reaction function after completing that exercise. How are you feeling right now about this whole Nonprofit Management Institute and assessing capacity and the framework and all that? So team, I'm looking at the reactions, so help me kind
Way
of
behind.
capture. Well, oh, I saw that, Lisa.
The funny faces.
Good.
I'm nerding out on the excitement. Good. Makes me feel better about my work. Good. Is everybody else just numb? Oh, okay, here we go. Great to good. Okay.
Is that an upside down smiley
It
face?
sure is.
I don't think
What does
I've
that
seen-
mean?
Mm.
Leslie, you want to tell us what that means? Oh Lord, the devil
Oh
there
my
is
goodness.
Brittany.
Well, at least the eyes are hearts. I mean, you know.
Leslie Patterson, you want to tell us what the upside down face means?
Yeah, it was good. It was just kind of long. I mean, it made me really think.
Okay.
Thank you. Amen to that coffee, I tell you. Well, first of all, like I said, give yourself a hand clap for completing that task. But this is a part of growing and developing that we should be doing routinely with the stakeholders that help us manage our nonprofits. We should be checking in with them, spending the time in discussion and utilizing them as thought partners around what are we doing now? What is it that we want to enhance? And how might we go about getting there? Because here's the thing, none of us can do this work by ourselves. And so when we are able to share with the supporters of our nonprofit organizations what it is that we need in order for us to become stronger, better, greater, when we have a framework that we can do that with, it becomes more clear to them. Because oftentimes we're walking around with all of these ideas and all of a lot of responsibility in order for this nonprofit to move along. And so whenever it is that we can kind of take a minute, I know that is a large request, taking a minute, I get it. But when we can take a minute to just really settle in and begin to kind of have some discussion around a way forward for us, then it's a lot more doable for our stakeholders to help us. And that is why we start here with the Institute. We could have started today, jump right into a topic, start talking about, how to strategically plan or how to fundraise. But we know that it's important for us to share with you that starting point. And that foundational piece is very, very important. So we've provided this framework, and you've submitted and shared those responses. Is there anyone who has a comment that they'd like to unmute and share?
I really like the question, and I've thought this along the way, but seeing the question on there around fundraising and does the organization or donor aligns with your mission and vision? So all money may not be good money, and making sure that accepting funds will come with, accountability and reporting back. But does it really align with your mission or are we just generating how much money we can get into the organization each year? So I was really glad to see that question on there.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I appreciate it just having it spelled out under each level and being able to sort of pick and choose, if that makes any sense, what's necessary or what's needed for your organization to go to the next level. Being from a 30-year-old nonprofit, again, it doesn't mean that we're truly in sustain mode, especially if you've got a change that you're going through, like for example, a capital campaign. And so this just gave it like teeth, like the exact details that I need to hone in on for the nonprofit as we change and add on a layer. So that was extremely helpful. It made it so plain and so clear.
Mhm.
Thank you for your feedback, Leslie. Oh, that was, yeah, it's 2 Leslies. I was like, no, it's 3 Leslies.
No, it's a few of them, yeah.
Because we have a Leslie on our team.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Anybody else? We do have just a couple more minutes that we can kind of hear back from you. You've been with us, how long, what is it, 2 hours now? No, 3 hours?
Yeah, almost 3.
Thoughts about completing this task?
I think that completing this task, actually probably just being part of this group is a little bit, like it tests your comfort level. I guess it's uncomfortable because it's making you really think introspectively and kind of higher level about where everything is. And I don't know where everyone else is, but one of my biggest struggles here is just being so pulled into day-to-day, like putting out fires. And this allows the space to kind of put that away and focus on where we want to be. And so it's uncomfortable, but I think discomfort is a really good thing. You'll have to probably remind me of that throughout this process.
Thank you, Summer. Thank you.
I think we have a technical question. Oh, go ahead. Sorry. No, you go ahead, whoever that is.
No, I was just gonna say, I threw this in the chat, but I just wanted to know if there was any way to share a version of that poll. I would love to put my senior team and my board, well, specifically my executive committee through that exercise. I think that's useful for people to see what we're striving for.
Which poll, Andre? Rebecca probably would have to answer that.
Just the one that
The
you
poll
worked
that
on, the
we
Survey
just
Monkey,
did.
the
Yep.
assessment. Yeah.
Yep.
We don't have it available. The link that we gave you is just for this cohort. If you're
Okay.
interested in
I just want to rebuild it. I just want to
Yeah.
rebuild that because I think that's the easiest way for people to go. I have a few people that want to go through it, and I could have them do it on paper, but because it's on Survey Monkey, I do not repeat or rebuild, recreate
It's already been
wheels.
done.
So
Yeah.
if there's any way to share that, and we don't
Yeah.
have to answer that question right now, but if there is any way to share that poll since you've already done it, so I
Yeah.
can have others go through it and it aggregates the results for you. That would be great, but we can talk about that offline.
I'll make a note to link up with you, Andre, about that. Thanks for the question.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Anybody else, in terms of just a little bit of a debrief from having spent time looking at capacity?
I would like to say that as we're going through the lessons and you have it set out to where it's build, thrive, and sustain, even though your organization is sustained in some areas, let's say, for instance, if you have to go back to the building stage of getting new board members and everything, it's like, okay, I got to go back and start building again because, you know, a board member stepped down. And so then you have to go back through the steps. So it's interesting to see that where you may be sustaining, you still have to continually to build and grow your organization.
And we might be there today, but something can happen overnight. I saw someone put in the chat, putting out fires, having to, you know, do the day-to-day operations and how kind of involved it gets. I won't say busy, how involved it gets in terms of what it is that you are managing on a day-to-day basis. You're exactly right, Yvonne. It can change. I mean, it can just change in someone resigning from the board.
Right.
That takes you back to another element of what might feel like the beginning. But these areas change as the individuals change and as circumstances change. COVID changed all of our organizations in ways that we would have never imagined. So some good, some not so good, but you know, nonetheless, we were impacted in that way. So what I want to kind of close this part of our work out with is we are going to use this feedback from you to help us to know specifically what we need to hone in on as it relates to these individual management functions when we do our work sessions. I'll call them work sessions because we are doing, we are sharing the what, but we are also showing you the how. And so because of that, it's participatory, it's engaging, and it requires all of us to be present, right, in the moment. And so we're going to use this feedback to help us to know how to better support you and help you throughout the duration of the institute. Rebecca, I think that concludes my part for today. And I think if no one has had if there's someone who has a comment they want to make or something they want to share as we get ready to close out session 1 of our Nonprofit Management Institute, please unmute yourself and go ahead and do that. Otherwise, it was nice meeting all of you. It was good working with you today. I'm going to be studying what you've shared by way of the assessment information, and have a good remainder of your week. And Rebecca and or Lisa, I'm going to pass it back over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Palmer. Just a few comments I'll make. It's keep it short because I'm between you and lunch. So I think we've had some conversations earlier about the booklet, the information you'll be getting from the center through this institute. It's really important to remember, and that's why we were asking those to join the institute, whoever will be communicating this information, the tools that we're giving you are a really great resource. Because as you'll see, when we go on to board governance, a lot of this stuff is, again, like we're on the plane, right? So we've taken off. So we're almost level, but not quite there yet, that you're going to be used. A lot of this information will be useful for you to use for your teams in your departments in terms of training and especially bringing your board together. So we hope that you'll use these tools, and anything you do not receive from us, let us know. We're going to gear up for next week, as you can see on the screen there. We will be posting a link for the follow-up evaluation. Again, please take the time to fill that out. It really will help us to hone in on the things you'd like discussed, or things that we need to take out, or however that might work for you. Our next session is on board governance. That would be, all of our sessions are intense, but I think board governance is really important because it really shows you how everything we talked about today intertwines into your board governance and builds from there. So if we don't have any other questions, again, you'll look out for the survey link that will be placed into the chat fairly soon. And then if there's anything else, you guys have a great week. Oh, I'm sorry, Rebecca, I didn't mention about the Facebook. You want to mention that really quick?
Sure, yeah, and then we'll give
Sorry.
you back some time in your day. That's okay. Yeah, no worries. I did provide that link up above the session 1 evaluation for that life cycles, life stages of nonprofits that Dr. Palmer mentioned. A lot of the things that you all are talking about pertain to the life cycles of a nonprofit and those stages that they go through, right? They find themselves back at build, and then they're flying high on sustain, right? At all different times. So feel free to check out that link. I do want to just mention that we will provide a wraparound email after today's session. Typically, it goes out on Thursday by the end of the day. It'll include a recording to today's session in both English and Spanish if we did things correctly today with recordings. Hopefully that all worked. It's our first time doing this. And it'll include the slide deck, any resources or things that we handed out to you during each session, a link to the survey evaluation, if you want a session 1 evaluation. And it'll also include a link to our Facebook group. We have a private Facebook group for this cohort. Or for Nonprofit Management Institute. And so we'll invite you all through the wraparound email to go ahead and join that. It is private. You'll get, we post questions for you all to be thinking about. The next one will be related to board governance because that's our next topic. And we'll be sort of asking you a question that you can respond to. It's a real quick poll. We also want you to invite you to use that to ask questions of your fellow cohort participants. And to share sort of how you're finding the Institute, if you have questions that you want us to take back to the group in a future session, that sort of thing. Keep in mind that workbook, if it hasn't arrived in your inbox or in your mailbox, it should be coming very soon. We do have a couple more to send out, including the Spanish versions, which will go out this week. And we look forward to seeing you all back here in about a week's time. And also look for that email of your results from that survey that you all took through SurveyMonkey. That'll be coming your way in a private email. With that, I think we'll say adios and want to say a special thank you to our interpreters that were with us today for sharing your expertise and your knowledge and leading us through that process. We're really grateful.
Right, if they wouldn't mind staying on for a minute once, and our Dr. Palmer, if you wouldn't mind, so we can debrief a little bit. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Take care. Take care. We'll see you next week.